What's up, everybody? Cardigan Kid here. We have a cool episode of Chasing Billy ready for you right now. Joining me in this episode is James B. Mills, author of Billy the Kid, El Bandido Simpatico, and Art T. Burton, author of Black Gun, Silver Star, The Life and Legend of Frontier Marshal Bass Reeves. These two guys are going to go head to head on the subject of who was more outlaw, Billy Bonney or Cherokee Bill. And I will let them have the floor and duke it out, and we'll see where we end up. All right, here goes nothing.
Young blood.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you got going on and you're just everything you're involved in?
Well, how much time you got?
All the time in the world.
uh, I taught American history, and I retired in 2015. I taught at a community college here in Chicago, and I taught everything from European history to American history, African American history, and African history. So, it covered a lot of bases, but I have a lot of interest in Wild West history because my mother was from Oklahoma, and I went to high school my last couple of years in Oklahoma, and I had a lot of cowboys, or well, modern day cowboys in my family, and they were in the rodeo thing. So, in around 1986, I got interested in trying to find out what was the history of African Americans on the Western frontier. And in 1991, I wrote the first book, a history book ever written on African American and Native Americans who were outlaw and lawmen in the Wild West. And that was Black, Red, and Deadly Black and Indian Gunfighters of the Indian Territory, 1870, 1907, which pretty much is about frontier Oklahoma, when it was the Indian Territory and Oklahoma Territory. And that's where you'd have found the majority of African Americans and Native Americans who were outlawed lawmen in the Wild West. Although there were others in other states or territories like Montana and Wyoming and various places, but the majority of them were in the Indian Oklahoma territories. And then I followed that up with a book on the Buffalo Soldiers. In 1999, it was called Black, Buckskin, and Blue, African American Scouts and Soldiers on the Western Frontier. And that book is one of the few, if it's not the only one, that talks about African Americans who were scouts and on the Western Frontier, which you get very little information on that. And then in 2006, I wrote a book, was published on Bass Reeves, one of the greatest lawmen in United States history, Black Gun, Silver Star, The Life and Legend of Frontier Marshal Bass Reeves. And around 2020, I wrote the biography on Cherokee Bill, Black Cowboy, Indian Outlaw. And I've written tons of articles for Wild West Magazine and True West Magazine.
That's so cool.
Yeah, some people call it the Bible on Bass.
Yeah.
I'm going to say,
now,
Townie, I'm going to prep you, Townie, man. Bass Reeves makes White Earp and Pat Garrett look like a couple of big fat pussies.
Yeah, I imagine so. Now, given that you're basically the authority on Bass Reeves, what was your take on the Lawman show?
I thought it was terrible. The only thing that was relevant was the fact that he had a family, and maybe he came out of slavery. But outside of that, there was no historical reality in the series at all.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
They make these shows and then they talk about the light that they're trying to bring to the historical narrative and how much work they're doing to shed light on the truth of the situation, and then it's so far off base and just entertainment oriented that it's just staggering.
Right.
And to the folks who know the history, it can be so disappointing. But I watched it and was like, I bet this is I'd like to talk to someone that knows about this.
I mean, if we want to, go through it sometime, we can, but it's a travesty.
I hate that because they get such a good budget, they get such a good cast, and they have such a great opportunity to tell a very interesting history that's oftentimes way more interesting than what they produce and what
Right.
they write out.
Yeah, I heard it was a
It,
great budget.
yeah,
Well,
Exact same thing happened with the Billy show that's going.
yeah,
I only lasted 3 episodes. I had to turn it off. Not even the historical inaccuracies. I mean, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, the Peckinpah film, that has a load of historical inaccuracies, but I consider it the greatest Western ever made. I love it. And I love the Young Guns films.
yeah. The movie Billy, how did you feel about that?
Billy,
Yeah.
is that the one? Which one do you mean? There's been a lot of them. Do you mean the one with the kid?
Yeah, the kid.
With Dane DeHaan?
Yeah, the kid.
The kid.
Yeah.
As a Western, I thought it was okay. Wasn't a great Western film, but Dane DeHaan's performance was the most historically accurate I've ever seen on screen by far. So it's worth watching just for that. My interest dims when he gets killed. So that's yeah.
All right.
I think the great thing about Dane's portrayal of the kid was that he showed you the likable parts and the parts that would endear you to him, but he also showed you that kind of insane, I'm gonna kill you if you wrong me in the slightest manner, and the outlawish bits that made him kind of made you shrink away from him. And so it was a very balanced portrayal a little bit, like he doesn't do right by that kid in the movie.
No, well,
What I
that
like
kid never
about the kid is, yeah, well, what I like about the kid is you can tell whoever wrote it. I don't know how much Vincent D'Onofrio was involved, but you could tell they had a love for the story itself, and they included a lot of stuff that you could tell that they had an appreciation for it.
It was definitely better than the series. Definitely better than the series, which is just riddled with wooden dialogue, cliched characters, and some of the inaccuracies are infuriating. How hard was it to get his mother's name right? Her name was Catherine, not Kathleen. Like, come on. So, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
So I can understand Art's frustration with the Bass Reeves show, which I was very much looking forward to. Don't they portrayed him as fighting in the Confederacy? I'm like, what? But the truth is so much better.
So how did this come about? James, you wrote it. Did you do the Jesse versus Billy article kind of blurb in the magazine first?
Yeah, I did. I think it was the December 2020, if my memory serves. I think it was 2020. Did a couple of articles with Wild West magazine, and they have the 10 reasons column. And I thought, well, I'll just have a little bit of fun with this because there's always been a bit of a friendly rivalry between the Billy Bonnie crowd and the Jesse James crowd over who's the cooler outlaw. So I thought I'll just have some fun with this. And I put 10 reasons why Billy, my original title was why Billy was a better outlaw than Jesse. They changed it to more outlaw, and just some tongue-in-cheek reasons like that. Jesse married his cousin. Billy didn't do that. Billy was killed by a real lawman, whereas Jesse got killed by that little Robert Ford. And then about 6 months later, I picked up an issue of Wild West magazine off the stands, and it was a good issue. And there was 10 reasons why Cherokee Bill was more outlaw than Billy the Kid. I was like, uh-oh, I started something. And that was before I actually knew Art, and we became friends. I contacted him, and we've talked so much about so much different stuff. Got a lot of stuff in common and interests. And, so Art basically stole my idea. But, hey, I'm all good with that because I have so much respect and admiration for Art and the work he does. So, and we were discussing it a couple of months ago, and Art posted the top 10 reasons why Cherokee Bill was more outlaw than Bonnie. And I think I commented, I said that a few of them are highly contentious. And it was Mr. Burton Mr. Burton, who suggested, he said, I'd be glad to debate this sometime. And I thought, well, I know just the place. I'll contact County. And of course, being the forgetful son of a bitch that he is, I had to remind him 2 or 3 times, hey, man, what about this thing we're doing with art?
That's a conservative number.
Yeah.
And here's the showdown. That's fantastic. So,
all in good fun.
The floor is yours. Who wants to take the first? Who wants to make the first case?
Seniority can prevail here, and Mr. Burton may go first on each point, and I shall then offer a rebuttal. So,
ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, act like you know it's going down. I'm your captain. It's going down. I'm your captain. It's going down.
One of the things that jumped out at me, though, was the fact that Cherokee Bill's real name was Crawford Goldsby, was much more the classic outlaw, where I didn't feel like Billy the Kid was a classic outlaw. When I mean classic, Cherokee Bill robbed trains, banks, and stagecoaches. And so he was what people would see an outlaw to be. And I don't really trumpet outlaws as heroes or anything like that, but he developed a legacy while he was living in terms of what he was able to do. And some people said he had a Robin Hood type of thing where he would share his plunder with some of the folks in the communities in which he rode through and lived in. Now, I don't know how much of the Cherokee, the analogy with I can't think of the guy's name. I just said his name.
Robin Hood or
Robin Hood would be. But he was an outlaw. He was a badass outlaw. Actually, if you ever see the series The Rifleman, he shot the Winchester rifle like the Rifleman. I don't know if they got that from Cherokee Bill or not, but he shot like the rifle to rattle people, he said, that way. And one time while he was in jail before he was executed, they brought a Winchester rifle into him, and they said he made it hum like a sewing machine, by bracing it against his knee and working the lever as such. But Cherokee Bill, he rode with the Bill Cook gang. Initially, he was the worst of the Bill Cook gang. They don't know how many people he killed. He killed somewhere between 6 and 13 people he killed. And then he was, executed before he was 21 years of age. So we can get started here, but just on that aspect, I thought, he was more of a classic outlaw than Billy Bonney.
Well, in terms of if by classic outlaw you do mean robbing banks and stuff like that, then definitely, give Cherokee Bill a nod on that. Bonnie was a rustler. That was his deal. He preferred to just steal cattle from the Anglo cattlemen and some of the rich guys he didn't like on the Texas Panhandle. And he was more a vigilante, especially during the Lincoln County War. I mean, he was actually a lawman at one point. He was Deputy William Bonnie.
Right.
So in that extent, Bonnie was not the classic outlaw, but some might suggest that kind of makes him the cooler outlaw, in that he wasn't the stereotypical bank robber or stuff like that. And there was a Robin Hood aspect to Bonnie, especially among the Hispanos of Nuevo Mexico. They adored him. He was like a symbol to them against predatory capitalism and a lot of things in Mexico, which had been brought about by the conditions in which they had to live. And Bonnie was very generous with the Hispanos, gave a lot to them. I don't know if he gave away like necessarily Robin Hood, but then I do recall reading that, with the Robin Hood stuff, that Cherokee Bill, he wasn't at one of the stores that they robbed, he got like 35 cents. So I don't know if he would have been able to give out much of that to anybody, but I was just thinking that wasn't much of a score, man. Come on, but so it's Cherokee Bill was a hell of an outlaw, no question about it, and he deserves to be far more known than he is. But he ain't Billy the Kid, and he didn't make the single greatest jailbreak in American frontier history. You want to talk outlaw? 2 deputies, boom, boom, rode out of town. So
Yeah, I think that's the reason why Cherokee Bill is not more known. Although he did attempt a jailbreak, it was unsuccessful. Cherokee Bill, on 2 occasions, went into 2 towns, and he started at one end of Main Street and robbed every store on Main Street. He did that on 2 separate occasions where he did that. It was a guy who was bad mouthing, and Cherokee Bill had a few girlfriends around. He was a nice looking guy. I've seen pictures of him. And the guy was telling the girl that he was going to, hurt Cherokee Bill if he catch him or whatever. And Cherokee Bill caught up with the guy and asked him, did he say what he said? And I guess Cherokee Bill had his gun on him. He told the guy, get down on his knees and start eating grass. And he made the guy get on his knees and eat grass until he had a good stomach full of grass. And then he told him if he ever see him again, he was going to kill him on the spot. That was the type of guy Cherokee Bill was. He was a total badass. And
that is bad.
Yeah, I mean, he moved amongst the Native Americans. Now, I know Bonnie moved amongst the Mexican Americans, but Cherokee Bill was around the Creeks and the Cherokee Indians. And he was a Cherokee freedman himself on his mother's side. A freedman was a person who previously had been a slave of the Cherokee or one of the 5 civilized tribes. And he was a descendant of Cherokee freedmen. And so he did know the Creek Indians. He knew the Cherokees, and I don't think he went into the Choctaw Nation, but those areas he worked in completely. Now in 1894, we're looking at about 120 years ago. This month, Cherokee Bill, along with the Bill Cook gang, robbed the Lincoln County Bank in Oklahoma Territory, and they got a little money, but they didn't get all the money that they were trying to find because the bank teller hid some of the money. I don't know about the 35-cent robbery, but he robbed. They would rob trains. They would rob the train stations. They would rob stores, and he was just on it in terms of robbing folks that he would get some money. And he was very colorful. Now I don't know how colorful Billy Bonney was, but Cherokee Bill had Jingle Bob spurs, which are about the coolest spurs a person can have. Those are the spurs with the little bells on them. And then he had chaps that had studs on them. He had metal studded chaps that he wore. And then he had a white hat with a red band that he wore. So he was in terms of his presentation, he was pretty damn cool.
Indeed, he was. He was a dandy dresser, and so was Billy Bonney. Except Bonney usually mostly dressed like a Americano, Nuevo Americano. He wore the white sombrero with a supposedly green hat band. We don't know much about his spurs or stuff like that. Sally Chisholm, who knew him, did say that he did sometimes wear a flower in his lapel. That's cool. That's showy. As far as the girls, I know Cherokee Bill was popular, but believe me, Billy Bonney had senoritas. What was it? Paulita Maxwell said it was one querida in every placita. Just about. He was a ladies' man, big time. And, I do like the story about Cherokee Bill making the guy eat grass. That's wild. Something that maybe a little similar was the time Bonnie ran into old John Chisholm, who he despised because he thought he owed him money in Fort Sumner, and Bonnie basically stuck the barrel of his gun in his mouth, in Chisholm's mouth, and just herded him around the saloon and made him stand on a pile of logs and stuck the gun into his tummy, and he had old man Chisholm quite nervous, and then he actually gave him 3 good kicks as he kicked him out of the saloon, didn't shoot him. And that actually reminded me of that. I wanted to ask you, I just because that grass thing reminds me, didn't he didn't Crawford also he shot his brother-in-law, killed his brother-in-law?
Yeah, he killed his brother-in-law. He didn't like his brother-in-law.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's bad as well. That must have been.
yeah. The popular story was they was arguing over a hog, which I doubt, but Cherokee Bill's brother-in-law didn't like him, and they, I guess, got into a serious argument, and so the brother-in-law got the short end of the argument. Cherokee Bill killed him.
Of course, was Cherokee Bill was a cooler name for an outlaw than Billy the Kid.
Right. Okay. Well,
So
art, art.
what do we think about that? I mean, Billy the Kid has more notoriety as a name, I think, because it's been in the cultural limelight so long. But
Yeah,
just if we could separate ourselves from that and look at the name Billy the Kid versus Cherokee Bill, this is off the cuff. I haven't given this much thought, but I do kind of feel like Cherokee Bill is kind of a badass name.
Oh yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Burton. You go first.
I think Billy the Kid. I mean, that's kind of a nice little name, but Cherokee Bill, it hits. Billy the Kid had 45 movies at least made in Hollywood. 45 movies. Cherokee Bill has not had a movie made on him yet, and so I just think Cherokee Bill. You could make a song about that easier than Billy the Kid, I think, or you can make a rhyme about Cherokee Bill. It's a cool name. There was other cats who called themselves Cherokee Bill in the West, but Crawford Goldsby was the one who really, his legend became legend.
For me, I'm going to go with Billy the Kid just because it rolls off the tongue slightly easier and it's got that youthful connotation in the nickname Kid, because you could also just call him the Kid or whatever. But Cherokee Bill is definitely, it's a good name. It's a very masculine outlaw name to me. Billy the Kid is kind of, it says what he was. He was a kid, teenager for most of it. I absolutely feel that Cherokee Bill should definitely have a movie or two by now. I think actually I think Bonnie's up to over 60 films now, believe it or not. He holds the record.
I was saying, I knew it was between him and Jesse James and Custer, probably, Western films, but yeah.
Bonnie's got it over all of them. He's got it all over all of them in that sense. But yeah, they're both good names. But me personally, it's just Billy the Kid. It just works. It's just perfect.
Art, there was a movie called Harder They Fall that was made by Netflix. Did you see Cherokee Bill's portrayal in it?
Right. It had nothing to do with the real Cherokee Bill.
Nothing at all.
Yeah, it just used his name.
There is, I mean, that hardly anything historical about that movie. But yeah, maybe that's a sign that he's making it into culture. That his name is getting out there at least.
Well, the Harder They Fall character was a badass, like a Cherokee Bill, but it didn't try to capture the essence of the real Cherokee Bill at all. But
Right.
if just say, well, okay, Cherokee Bill was a badass, so this guy's trying to portray a badass.
Just a point I wanted to add, that Art mentioned that like there were other Cherokee Bills, people use that name, but of course Crawford Goldsby was the one that makes it famous. As Townie knows, there were other Billy the Kids. There was a Billy the Kid who was a stage robber in Colorado. There was a Billy Claiborne over in Tombstone, had the nickname Billy the Kid, and that was before Bonnie even really became famous. There were other Billy the Kids, but there was only one who owns that nickname.
Yeah, actually,
Billy
Bass Reeves arrested a Billy the Kid in the 1890s in Texas. Or, well, not in Texas, but down in near Texas in the Indian Territory. Yeah.
Yeah, there was Billy Burke was a bank robber from New York who was he got a lot of notoriety. Even started to pick up right in 1881 after Billy Bonney was killed. And I think there was also a Billy the Kid who was a member of the Exelby gang out of Montana or Oklahoma. I forget where they were out of, but author Dale Tunnell, he speculates that John Miller, the claimant to Billy the Kid later on, was really George Exelby from that gang. So,
Mm.
very interesting theory. But yeah, tons of Billy the Kids, uh, just like Cherokee Bill. Bill embraced the Indian, freedmen, Cherokee, Creek, black and white cultures. Billy only embraced the Mexican culture. So this point being that Cherokee Bill was a little more widely cultured.
It was much more of a dynamic in terms of the population being diverse. You had a few Mexicans in Indian Territory, but mostly various Indian tribes that you would come in contact with. And Cherokee Bill traversed those areas and knew those communities well. So uh, he was around whites, blacks, and various Native American tribes. And actually, I was doing research in Oklahoma. I ran into an older black man, and he told me that when he was a little kid, he used to hear people tell a ditty, said, "If I live and don't get killed, I want to grow up and be another nigger like Cherokee Bill," which I thought was interesting.
That's
That's
it.
unreal.
That's the cool thing about historical research that I think as time moves on, we're going to see less and less of is that there's just like a generation or so between us and them to where there's still a lot of stuff handed down like that. And
Right.
as time passes, that's just disappearing. But there was a time you could just go to those locales and run into folks who could tell you, tons of stuff undocumented and just handed down through tradition and just amazing that I really lament that we're losing just to time. There's nothing we
Right.
can do about it.
Yeah, oral stories are important, and if they're not captured, they go with the people. Doing my research, I ran into dozens and dozens of people said I need to talk to so and so dad 3 or 4 years ago. So
Mm.
there's a lot of stories, and so trying to capture the stories with the people who may have some while they, are still around is important.
My rebuttal to this is Art is right. Cherokee, he did embrace a lot of those cultures and was around it. I will point out, Billy, obviously he was spent a lot of time around whites and black folk as well. He was friendly with Sebi and Bates, who worked for the McLeans. But he also mingled quite a bit with the Apache. That must be said. In fact, he used to steal horses from their reservation with some of the other regulators. So he was familiar with the Apaches and their culture.
Mm.
And let's not forget, he was also Irish, and indications are he probably spoke the language, Gaelic, may have spoken Gaelic as well. So a little more to it than just the Hispanos, but there's no question that the culture he embraced the most was Nuevo Mexicano, and proudly so.
That's a good point. I wasn't aware that he was, with the Apache that much. And
Oh, he was.
yeah, it's interesting. He could speak Gaelic, huh? Yeah.
Supposedly, there's indications, we don't know for certain completely, but there's indications, strong indications that, yeah, he did speak Gaelic. So so that's, he was trilingual. That's 3 languages, which is not bad for a young man his age.
Right.
Yeah, and hasn't it been speculated that the fact that he was already bilingual with Gaelic would have helped him pick up Spanish a lot quicker?
Could it be?
Oh, I don't know about that. I think living among the Hispanos probably helped with that more than anything. The best way I find to learn another language is to spend so much time around people who speak it. But obviously, he clearly, because he did become fluent in Nuevo Mexicano Spanish, clearly he just had a knack for it, for picking up languages. And by all accounts, he learned Spanish pretty quick. So this is a smart kid. But, and Cherokee Bill, he's a smart guy too. In terms of, I'm assuming he would have had to have been able to intermingle with so many different cultures.
Yeah.
Rifle and pistol expert, Cherokee Bill could brace a Winchester against his thigh and lever it so fast the rifle would sound like a sewing machine. Known as a deadly marksman, Bill was also game to shoot it out with a posse. The kid, on the other hand, was known less for his shooting prowess than for his bushwhacking skills. Um, and the reason I'll concede this point is there's conflicting evidence that he was a crack shot or just a typical shot. And I know George Coe said that, he was better than Billy at either the pistol or the rifle. I can't remember which. And I think Pat Garrett said that he was as good as anybody else on the frontier, but nothing to write home about. And so I think there's at least some conflicting opinions on this. But do you want to talk a little bit about Cherokee Bill's abilities and why you think those outclass Billy the Kid's?
Well, Cherokee Bill was a homicidal maniac in the sense that he liked to have shootouts with the posse. I've never come across an outlaw that loved to have shootouts with the posse. And he was not scared of lawmen. I mean, this cat really loved to have shootouts. In one of the shootouts he had, I guess one of the posse members was sticking his boot out to kind of, I don't know, kind of pull Cherokee Bill out. Cherokee just shot him in the foot, uh, and on one occasion he dropped his hat. His hat fell off his head, and he didn't want to lose his hat, and so he pulled the rifle over his head and started running and screaming at the posse, and the whole damn posse turned around and ran. I mean, yeah, because they had that fear of Cherokee Bill. Uh, he was, this cat was just off the chain, man, in terms of his courage, as an outlaw. He was not scared, and used to like to brag about people he wanted to kill, although he didn't kill most of the folks he wanted to kill. But the interesting thing, probably this greatest shot he had, well, one of the greatest that's recorded, when they robbed the Lincoln County Bank in Chandler. It was a guy about 300 yards away, and he was on the front of a barbershop, I believe. And he seen the gang, and he started hollering, "The Daltons are in town. The Daltons are in town. They're trying to rob the bank." And Cherokee Bill told him to shut up. And he kept hollering, and Cherokee Bill took his Winchester and killed him at 300 yards. Which is a pretty good shot.
That's a hell of a shot.
Yeah.
I will say Bonnie was known to be pretty damn good with the Winchester, but regarding to the whole pistol shot thing, there were two people who both knew Bonnie, Amelia Bolton, and Francisco Gomez, who worked for the McTwains. They both knew Bonnie, and they both vividly recalled watching them throw a tomato can, high into the air. Bonnie would draw his revolver, 6 shots, boom, 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 and it would be riddled with holes before it even hit the ground. And so that tells you there he clearly was a crack shot and knew what he was doing. And I will also point out there was a reason Pat Garrett was so damn nervous and was shitting himself when he actually shot Bonnie in the dark. There was a reason Pat Garrett, who openly admitted later he was scared. There was a reason. So Cherokee Bill, that's that actually the 300-yard shot. That reminds you of the shot George Coe made during the Lincoln County War. One of the Seven Rivers guy, I can't remember his name right this precise second. He shot a rifle shot supposedly that length. That's a hell of a shot, 300 yards of the Winchester. Bonnie was someone who, unlike Cherokee Bill, didn't really go out of his way to shoot it out with posses. That said, he was ready for a fight if it was there and coming. But Cherokee Bill sounds like he was a man. He loved it. He loved being an outlaw. He loved doing that stuff.
Yeah, he did. Well, I mean, if Billy put 6 holes in the can, it shows he's a real good pistolier. But yeah, Cherokee Bill was he had some psychological issues going on. I'm not sure that Billy the Kid had, where he believed in what he was doing and he loved what he was doing, and he hadn't had no fear of dropping people if he had to, or innocent people who wasn't armed, like that barber was hollering. They robbing the bank and he didn't have a gun. Cherokee Bill just popped him, man.
Bonnie never shot anyone who I would describe as innocent.
Right.
None of the men that he put a bullet in, I would describe them as innocent. They all had done something. But yeah, I was just thinking, when they do make a proper film about Cherokee Bill, from what you're telling me, man, they've got to have a Notorious B.I.G. do song on the soundtrack. Because, I mean, he just sounds like it's just great gangster stuff, man.
Yeah. And he was
they definitely.
he was a good
Go ahead,
size
Art.
guy. He was about 6 feet tall, and they say he was pretty husky, and pretty strong. So yeah, I'm sure he can handle
Well, that
himself.
Billy Bonnie was. Billy Bonnie was not husky or strong.
No, he was kind of thin. But I did get a story that Cherokee Bill, when this gang would be practicing, he would put a target on a tree, and he'd mount his horse, and he would ride around the tree as fast as he could. And they said with his Winchester, he could hit that target on mark every time he rode around the tree, which is, that's damn good shooting.
It is.
To be fair to Cherokee Bill, he did warn that guy. He did tell the guy to be quiet.
He did tell him to shut up. Yeah.
Have any of you guys ever seen someone, I know there are expert marksmen out there now, but the idea of throwing a can up and hitting it 6 times, it just seems to me like there wouldn't be enough time to do that. Is that like a thing that people really do, Or
If
is
they
that a
know
tall
what they're
tale?
doing, yeah.
Yeah, they
I mean,
do it
well,
now. The people that practice a lot with pistols today, and they have this Western action shooting folks. Some of them are pretty good. But they had people going back in previous years in the early days. They practiced a lot. They could get pretty good.
as Frank Coe said, Downey, as you know, Frank Coe said Bonnie was practicing all the time. And if it came from just one person, or if it was just a story that told, I would doubt it. But the fact that it came from both Amelia Bolton and Francisco Gomez, who were both living in Lincoln during the Lincoln County War, the fact that both of them vividly recalled seeing that, watching Bonnie do it, for me, that's enough to say he was just an ace with a pistol and pretty damn good with a rifle too. Although he never shot anyone from 300 yards, so I'll give Cherokee Bill that.
I think in this day and age, it's hard to imagine spending that much time dedicated to anything. But if you look at like how little distractions they had back then, and how much time they could commit to any pursuit that they wanted to do, and you think about the hours that Billy or Bill spent target shooting, and I mean, you've got the whole day on your hands sometimes, and provided you had the money to pay for shells to practice, man. I guess it's pretty insane to think how good you could get and how familiar with the rifle or the pistol you could be with that much time to practice.
Cherokee Bill had a friend, I guess you call it, owned a store in Sapulpa, which is in the Creek Nation, where he would go get his bullets. And so he didn't pay for the bullets. The guy would give him the bullets so, they can get the hell out of his store. And so he got free ammunition that way. Yeah, actually, after they captured him, the guy came and visited Cherokee Bill while he was in the federal jail at Fort Smith, Arkansas. And he told a story about why he gave him, ammunition and supplies when they came by his store. He was scared as hell of them, So, he didn't want no
I don't blame him.
Yeah.
James, it's entirely possible that Bonnie absconded with some shells and stuff from stores and told him to chalk it up to his tab. I could see Bonnie doing that.
Yeah, I think that's there's a chance that may have gone on, especially at the Gritchalowski store in Porta de Luna. We do know that he did try to swipe some pack of cartridges from there once and didn't work out. He ended up actually putting it back because he got caught. So, yeah, these guys, when you're living out, especially if you're out on the range, what the hell else have you got to do? You might as well just practice if you've got the shells. So,
yeah. Killer instinct. Bill was personally responsible for 6 known deaths. While newspapers credited him with as many as 13, Billy the Kid was personally responsible for 4 and possibly 5 more in gang shootouts.
Well, that's correct. Billy Bonney was solely, single-handedly responsible for 2 in self-defense, 2 escaping jail. They were Frank Cahill, Joe Grant, the self-defense, and escaping jail was James W. Bell and Bob Olinger. Regarding the others, what was? Can we go back to my memory's a little hazy right now at this time of night. What was the statement again? Let's see the list. Oh, yeah. Regarding the number of deaths, well, I wouldn't actually describe the other deaths at shootouts as necessarily gang shootouts. That was actually, I'd describe it as guerrilla warfare. That's what was going on in Lincoln County with the Lincoln County War. That was guerrilla warfare going on. But yeah, he was involved in other shootouts in which men got killed, but we don't know, if or how many. He may have put a bullet in Bill Morton, but Frank Baker, I believe, as I recall, he had 5 bullets in him. There were 10 regulators. Bonnie may not have actually put one in Frank Baker, so we don't know in that sense. But yeah, affirmed 6 is single-handedly is more than Bonnie, but whether or not that might make him more of a criminal, whether or not it makes him a better or a cooler outlaw, I think that depends on your definition of what makes a cooler or a better outlaw. So
I remember when I was growing up, they said Billy the Kid killed 21 people. Later on, I found out he didn't nearly kill 21 people. But
no,
that was out there for a long time, 21.
and that was
really.
That was a total myth. He never killed half that many. But as Powney's discussed before, there is a chance that myth that may have actually started with Bonnie himself. In that Billy was like a lot of men on the American frontier, didn't believe in letting the truth get in the way of a good story. And I can easily picture Bonnie saying, "Oh yeah, I've killed 21 men, 1 for every year of my life." Well, Billy could bullshit a little, but no, it wasn't true.
Cherokee Bill started by killing a Indian posseman who tried to arrest him in the Cook gang at a stagecoach stop. It was an Indian by the name of Sequoia Houston. And that was the first death that he killed. And then he later killed a conductor who tried to kick him off a train and killed his brother-in-law. And the most dastardly crime was him and another outlaw was sticking up a store in a town in the Cherokee Nation up near the Kansas border. And they were firing off their guns, and the guy was across the street just painting a building. They was, and he stuck his head around to see what the shooting was about. And Cherokee Bill seen him looking through the window, and he just put a bullet between his eyes. Just cold-blooded killing, man. And so that was
why not?
Yeah, that he was prosecuted for when he went to jail in Fort Smith, and he killed a couple other people.
Good looks. Who was better looking, Billy the Kid or Cherokee Bill? And before we get into this, I'll say we can either go by firsthand accounts or by the surviving pictures. And I think if we go by the surviving pictures, Art is gonna come out on top on this one.
Yeah, I'm in trouble if we go by the picture. Go ahead, Mr. Burton.
Yeah, Billy the Kid was bucktooth. Probably cute with the buck teeth, but Cherokee Bill was more of a nice looking cat.
Well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, obviously, and we all say that. Unfortunately, Bonnie is remembered physically for what was, by all accounts, a dreadful photo. And in fact, the late Drew Gomer is a lovely man, passed away not too long ago. He's buried at Port Stanton now, and appropriately so. He was a tour guide for many, many years. He once said that basically Billy Bonney is remembered by the equivalent of his driver's license photo. It's a dreadful shot. But those who knew Bonney personally, and not even those that were necessarily his friends, I'm talking impartial newspapermen, they all described him as quite a handsome young kid. He was a handsome fella. And I will add, with Bonnie, he did have a full set of hair, whereas didn't Cherokee Bill, didn't he start losing his hair and he was had to shave his head?
Well,
and that's low. Don't nobody bring up Cherokee Bill's hair problems.
he kept his hair cropped close to his head. You know, it's hot in the Indian Territory, so he got those low haircuts, man.
Yeah.
And he had nappy hair, you know, like so. You know, he didn't need much hair on his head, so.
He was a good-looking dude. I will say, indifferent to the size, Bonnie was about 5'8", 5'9". He was a waif, skinny. Cherokee Bill was big, husky-looking guy. There's a saying down here in Australia, though. It's good things come in small packages. So
Right.
good things do come in small parcels. So I guess that's all in the. We'll have to let the ladies judge that one ultimately. Do they prefer the funny short guy, or do they prefer the big masculine dude? So kind of like judging Jason Momoa and Michael J. Fox.
Yeah. Cherokee Bill was a snappier dresser, accessorizing outfits with a wide-brimmed hat, red bandana, leather chaps, metal studs, Mexican jingle bob spurs. Billy was a frump by comparison.
That's harsh. A frump.
And we probably going back to that photo that you know that we only have of Billy.
Yeah. No, that's a fair assessment based on the photo. The late Frederick Nolan actually once said that he looked like a cretin in that photograph. So that's a fair assessment on that. But as I said, Billy was known to be a much better dresser than he looked in that photo. And of course, everyone pictures him with the black stove in hat. And in fact, it was well known that Bonnie wore sugarloaf sombreros. So that was his preferred hat of choice. So.
Okay.
And the flower and the lapel, pretty sweet. So they were both. Bonnie was known to be neatly like a guy who took pride. So I think we'll give that to both of them. They clearly took pride in their appearance, Cherokee and Billy Bonnie.
Okay.
If we look at financial value, the value offered by the law for the capture of the wanted fugitive, the reward for Cherokee Bill climbed as high as $1,300, while the most offered for Billy was $500. Was that inflation?
It could have been. I'll agree. It could have been inflation because it was almost 20 years later. So it could have been inflation.
$500 was the standard reward pretty much for any outlaw in New Mexico territory. That was pretty much as high as they went in most cases. Jose Chavez had $500 on his head at one point. So as far as the reward amount goes, I have to give it to Cherokee Bill on that. $1,300 is more. 20 years later, inflation a little, but hey, that is a bigger reward. But I will say, neither of them had anywhere near as much on their head as Jesse James, and I think Jesse James was a dick. So I'll take Cherokee Bill and Billy Bonnie over Jesse. So reward money or not.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Yeah, I think we can agree on that. Let's go by the New York Times. Headliner, number 10. The New York Times featured a running commentary on Cherokee Bill and the Cook Gang in Indian Territory. The Times only mentioned Billy the Kid once before his death.
Mr. Burton?
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked to find out that the New York Times had a running commentary based on the fact that when we got to the 20th century, you heard nothing about Cherokee Bill. And
right.
Like James is saying now, Cherokee Bill, I don't know how many books, but we do know 60 movies have been made about Billy the Kid. But during the 19th century, people were aware of Cherokee Bill in one of the major newspapers in New York City, which was astounding to me. They knew about him at the time that he was doing his stuff, and then when they popularized the Wild West, Cherokee Bill got kicked to the curb. So.
Yeah,
Why do you think? I just want to ask, why do you think that is? Do you think that's the same reason as Bass Reeves was forgotten for so many decades because he was black?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, racism was worse in the 20th century than it was in the 19th century in the United States. And so,
That's true.
everything that African Americans did, it got trivialized or totally, forgotten about.
Yeah.
So when they made movies about the Wild West, you wouldn't have seen black outlaws in Western
No.
movies.
No, you saw pieces
Yeah.
of crap like Birth of a Nation.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, terrible.
Yeah,
Terrible.
I mean, Hollywood and the American public would have flipped if you would have saturated the market with Bass Reeves movies or Cherokee Bill movies.
Well, America wasn't ready at that particular time, for sure.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I'm gonna
probably the case.
close on a strong point of rebuttal with this one. The New York Times did run a running feature on Cherokee Bill. That's no question about it. But when Billy Bonney was killed, he wasn't just mentioned in the New York newspapers. His death was mentioned in the Canadian newspapers, in the London Times, in Scotland newspapers, Ireland newspapers, and we now know his death was even reported in Australian newspapers. So I will say that Bonney's death, that was global. Cherokee Bill's was national. Bonney's death, worldwide.
Okay, well, you got me on that one because I don't know. I haven't done the research to find out if Cherokee Bill's demise went, international or not. But something
Have
I
to
can
check
follow
on it.
up and see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll put a comma on this debate instead of a
Right.
period.
Right.
But I mean, Cherokee Bill and the Cook Gang, I think, deserve a lot more attention. The Cook Gang was notorious and vicious, and I mean, they were a busy gang. And you hear about the Dalton Gang, you hear about Jesse James. I mean, these guys. There's a lot of rich history here that is just virtually untapped. And I saw that when I went in looking for, because there was a member of the Cook Gang named Jim French, and
Right.
a lot of folks have claimed that that's the Jim French who rode with Billy the Kid as a regulator.
No.
And I put together an article where it just wasn't the case. And
Mm-mm.
so the picture even that circulated for ages, and they said this is the regulator Jim French. It was actually James Kell French, and but the things that I learned about the Cook Gang and all the stories researching him, just fantastic. And I was like, this whole area needs more light on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I really, it didn't resonate with me, but I just recently found out that Jim French was on his way to kill the lawman who captured Cherokee Bill when he was killed himself, which is kind of
Wow.
interesting. They were that tight, and today Jim French lies very close to Cherokee Bill's grave in the People's Cemetery in Fort Gibson, Oklahoma.
Well,
But
that's cool.
yeah, and Jim French was supposed to be very, very smart. He went
He
to the
was, yeah.
Cherokee Seminary and was very educated, and so they said he was an interesting guy.
Yeah, definitely was. I had a lot of fun researching that. But Art, James, thanks so much for coming on.
This was
This
fun.
was a great discussion. I
Right on.
always enjoy hanging with you, James, and it was a great pleasure to talk with you, Art, and to meet you. And we should do
Likewise.
this some more. We should get on and cause more
Absolutely.
trouble. this will
Okay.
this will be super fun.
Maybe County, something to consider. Maybe Lawman debate, Pat Garrett and Bass Reeves. I know who'll win, but it could still be
Oh
fun to discuss.
man,
Ah,
that would be
that's a-
fantastic.
yeah, okay, we could do that. Pat Garrett was a wimp, but yeah, we could do that.
He was. I'm with you on that, man.
We'll call the Cherokee Bill Bears and Billy the Kid a draw for now.
Yeah,
We'll call it a draw. We'll call it a draw for now.
Yeah, we'll call it a draw for now.
Draw.